All right, Delta, the latest airline to feel the backlash of poor customer service in a recent video also going viral. A family is seen being threatened with jail time for not giving up a seat that they paid for to another passenger. It was just last month, of course, that a passenger was seen being dragged out of his seat on an overbooked United flight. Brynn Winegard is a marketing expert who joins us now to talk some more about this and how it all looks. Thanks for joining us, Brynn.
Hi, Marilla.
Okay, so this is a bit of a different situation in this most recent Airlines video because you have a family of four with two young kids, and they actually paid for the seat that their one-year-old is in, but there's some background here that I think might make it play differently.
Yeah, I mean, this is, as you say, a different situation. Now, it turns out that, airlines do this quite regularly. So whether passengers pay or not, airlines do often overbook. It's part of the policy that they are allowed to overbook. And so what we noticed as an example with some airlines, United Airlines, as an example, had about 4,000 passengers in 2016 who were forcibly removed, who were asked to leave even though they had paid for seats or compensated otherwise. And so you're looking at about 0.1% of passengers that are asked to leave, and that's allowed. That's actually part of their right as air carriers to be able to ask passengers, paid or not, to leave airlines.
I guess the question should be then, why aren't they getting at these folks ahead of them getting onto the plane and sitting down? Because that seems to be the trouble. I mean, most of us assume that once we sit down, put our baggage away, that we're good to go. And that is what looks so terrible for everybody else out there.
Yeah, I think, a couple of things at play here. One of them, of course, is logistics of an airport, of trying to get all of these various passengers onto airplanes. Airplane turnaround time has decreased over the last 10 years. So how airplanes actually have to come in, dock, be cleaned, and then move again, be stationed and taxied out, has now been decreased on average. And so what you're seeing is logistics that have had to be quickened effectively. They have to hurry up. And so there's a challenge there. The second, of course, is that while this has always been happening, now we're just hearing about it. And so now, of course, people a lot more on high alert about this after the United Airlines issue. And now phones and so on able to capture a lot of this when previously it was happening, we just weren't aware of it.
All right. So as you say, high profile now because we're also keenly aware of it, having seen a couple of incidents now online. What would be your public relations advice to these companies, given the climate at the time?
Yeah, so I think, that's such a good question, Marilla. I mean, ultimately, what airlines have to do is take very cautious care with these kind of things. We have to keep in mind as marketers, as business people, as suppliers in the marketplace, that everyone has an eye and ear and can post immediately online, which does pose a risk, right? I mean, this means that other people can get ahead of the story. And so in terms of advice, the real advice is to make sure that you're owning that story, that you're owning that narrative, that your leadership is obviously coming ahead of this and making things, known about why it is that these situations happened or why certain contexts were able to be carried forward. And then ultimately, having a social media crisis plan in place, making sure that they make their amends and make their apologies, making sure that they are having that conversation with consumers. And then, of course, making sure that in general, they don't err so that they have more trust with consumers. Because one of the things that airlines, Delta, United, certainly feeling that right now, one of the challenges is that they're losing the trust in those consumers who can see and have heard of all of these atrocities.
Yeah, absolutely, because the word gets around far too easily these days, of course. Brynn Winegard, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Marilla.